this one's how you do that. It's really cool.
It doesn't. Oh.
Like filmed his making his posters.
It doesn't matter if you did. It's fine. All right. So also I made a little presentation, and yeah, there we go. So basically, I started with reading the brief as well. But what I also searched for keywords. But what I most look for was because I think my starting approach was more commercial than Isa and me who have presented. So I basically started with the kind of quality they want to deliver through this visual aid. So what I found, well, they're pretty generic, like meaningful, beneficial, enjoyable, and emotionally engaging. And then basically well, the basic reason they're here is basically us to visualize them. So I had basically I stick to the rule of working on design and screen culture on Thursday, and had an emergency with my agency on Wednesday, so my time was pretty limited. So I started with a rather straightforward approach. Did what I was not supposed to do, dive straight into research. There we go. So basically there was three
So that's all the caveats there that you need, and then we'll see what you've done.
Okay, so basically I've got three ideas, but mostly pathways of visual possibilities.
Okay.
So the first idea is quite traditional form, but experiment with visual potentials. That is possible. And basically here are a bit of examples I got from my research, just to to demonstrate the kind of idea I've got in mind. It's basically, well, I feel like if we can get to know the limitation, then it's probably better to start with the limitation and turn these limitations to kind of like directions. Yeah, so then I was thinking about if we could get this information get this kind of visual guidance from the visual identity, the corporate visual identity. I think Melanie mentioned in our briefing that it is going to be delivered to us as like a booklet, something at the start of next week. I think she mentioned that.
It's going to be on the Dropbox on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically I was waiting to get...
The brand guidelines.
Oh, the brand guidelines. I was going to say everything's on there, but she did say that, didn't she?
Yeah, because she said they were working on it for now.
Okay.
Yeah, so to see how text and images can integrate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also I found this booklet. Oh, actually, this is the same client I worked for over the summer, and they were quite a difficult client. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very big TV merchant in China. Yeah. So, but basically, this was the kind of like guidebook of their brand, like a catalog of their brand. And the targeted audience is the potential customers in Portugal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I feel like this designer did something that I was basically shallowly lying in my subconscious that I thought I could do, is that playing around within a grid, within a very consistent grid, to play around with the composition of all different all different visual elements that will fulfill the function of this publication or of this visual aid. Yeah. And also this is another example I found. So for pros and cons, I was thinking that, well, the pro is that this kind of method comes with the clarity, and it's pretty timeless, and we're all quite familiar with it. So I feel like it can be easily perceived. Yeah, won't be that much of energy investment required to sort of get used to the kind of new art form. Yeah, so pretty commercial, I would say. So, and then also it is pretty easy to, it's pretty transcriptable as a PDF to come across as like a digital version of the visual aid. And the disadvantage is that it's very predictable and might come across as boring. So I feel like since I have 4 weeks, so probably I could definitely dive in and look for more possibilities. Mm-hmm. And the second pathway is that to generate original elements from the given kind of visual starting points, and also for this I refer to the visual identity guidelines, the brand guidelines. And also, as Ethan and Amy have mentioned, the kind of lacking of good imageries they provided for certain aspects they want to advertise in this visual aid. So I feel like perhaps it is a good idea to generate our own images, and also since the 5 aspects are kind of quite different, but all fall under one kind of umbrella brand. So I feel like if we have our own kind of images made, then we can really get a grip of consistency, of visual consistency over the entire visual aid. And here are a few examples. So this publication was basically playing around with types and using types as imageries. So I feel like if this was done quite cleverly, it can actually save a lot of money and physical material in terms of production. Yeah. So I feel like perhaps this is worth looking into and experimenting with. And also, yeah, this is another example of a publication of the clothing brand Timberland, but all the imageries and visual elements were commissioned as illustrations. Yeah, but very consistent. So the advantage is that it's original and with a quite strong visual characteristic, and as I have just mentioned before, with its consistency. Yeah, but the drawback of this idea is that it requires great amount of investment in money, energy, and in this case, I think it will be likely for me to commission, but we still need to save money for the production of the print, and I feel like maximum we can only spend £4 on each print. So I think this is a problem that needs to.
No, you don't get paid.
No. Yeah. So basically, I see this as a more practical problem. Yeah.
You could do your own, like your illustrations are insane. Like you could do your own.
Yeah.
Like your drawings are so they would fit into that really nicely.
Thank you, but I feel like it's still investment of time and energy.
Yeah, true. Yeah, those things took you ages.
Yeah. So.
Like 2 day doing the poster.
Oh really?
Like
That
yeah.
it was cool.
Yeah, basically, I work for like 6 hours per day, just like doing one poster. It's like entirely hand drawn, but it was hell.
It was help.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Tick, not doing that again.
yeah. So basically, right here comes the third pathway, go wild. Yeah. So I was basically looking into all kind of overboard possibilities of. So basically, just pushing the brink of publication. And basically anything that convey information in a sort of physical way. Here, one of them. And this was basically kind of like a chronicle of modern Hong Kong history in terms of local toys. Yeah, so basically it was basically to convey something like quite a nostalgic information, like quite a nostalgic kind of sentiment, yeah, for this publication. Yeah, and also perhaps look into origami, yeah, of like how so basically how 2-dimensional plane can be transferred into 3-dimensional things, yeah, and basically how we could generate additional space and surfaces for a certain information to be conveyed. So basically. We made something, it's basically to make something like a publication, something is linear, into something that is more multidimensional. Yeah, and posters in as well. So the advantage is that wow factor that could really impress our clients, and also it also creates a novelty, like yeah. Right, okay, if that is how to pronounce this word, yeah, novelty. And I think this will fit quite well into the idea of niche that was delivered from our client. But the disadvantage of this idea is that it can be quite unpredictable, especially when it comes to the production phase of this project. And then, because if we are to make things like this, how to print it and bind it can be quite something to experiment and tamper with. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that it won't be smooth. Yeah, so basically still investment of time and energy. Yeah. And so far, I've got a wee plan. It's basically just to, because I feel like all the research I've got was quite generic and basically sort of like loose guidance for me. So I feel like the next week I'm trying to tighten it up a bit and come up with an action plan that I can actually crack into. And also, since it was sort of being focused by Ethan and Amy just now, I feel like I do need to experiment and look more into the concept and the ideas. So basically something more contextual, like to reach a contextual uniqueness in their branding. Yeah. So, and I wonder if you guys got any questions.
Got a comment.
Go ahead. Comments and questions.
Juxtaposition of them.
Oh.
Sorry? Sorry, what did you say just now?
No, I like to go wild one.
All right, thank you.
All the illustrations one, I think, not the first one. It feels, that's like my third idea, that it's like the stick to the brand and do what they want. I think it just,
Yeah.
you seem most excited about the last one as well.
Yeah, well, the reason I came up with the first one was basically with some other more practical considerations in terms of invest my time, especially time and energy, and I feel like money is the next thing. Yeah, so
I feel like you shouldn't worry about that yet. Like your most exciting one is the last one. Like you straight away were like, but the problem is already that we're not going to have the money to do it, or it's like limited.
Yeah.
And I think like what Zoe said to Ethan, just like don't even think about that yet, and be like, hey, like I should make something, and you know, like don't like it's great, it's really systematic, and you're weighing it up, and that's what you should do for a client brief, I feel. But don't like some of that stuff was really cool and really exciting, so I wouldn't. Yeah, if it was me, I would think about that. I'd just be like, oh, let's see if I can make something, or if it works anyway, and then like do the pros and cons of it.
yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, because I feel like it might be a better idea. It won't be a worse idea to start big and then work small. Yeah.
That was fantastic advice that you got there.
Could deliver what's predictable and then use this as an opportunity to get an actual real life client if that's what you want. Like this could actually take on outside of university, it could be your independent project. So in some ways, if you feel confident in the first idea and you feel that you can deliver it in a really professional manner, I think that also has its benefits to you as an individual and like a student with this opportunity.
Okay.
It depends what you want out of this project.
Right. Thank you.
And I guess as we go through the academic year, it's about you looking at your portfolio, that body of work, and seeing where you want to showcase particular skills, or if there are any gaps in there. And I think part of this course is more the latter of what you showed than the former, but we've got to be able to do the former as well. So it's just about getting the right kind of balance for you and ensuring that you're showcasing all of those skills in some way.
Yeah.
I think one thing that you said halfway through, which I thought was interesting, was looking at just the typography and the wording, and whether we look back at some of those animations and movies that have been created for the audio, whether that's actual words or noise, and whether that could be brought out as a key feature as well.
So, yeah, because I feel like something that is like typography, textual, and visual, so basically images, and something that is audio, like all this information, they're actually like transcriptable between one another. Like, I feel like this is more kind of like a fine art thought that I have, but yeah, I feel like perhaps I could put this into practice for a part of this project.
Yeah. There's a book called One Red Dot. Don't know if you've seen it. It's an origami book. But there are paper elements within that make noise.
I see. Okay.
That might be interesting to look at. that one book will probably cost £8,000. So I'm not suggesting you go down that route, but it would be a good reference.
Right, thank you.
How much talked a bit about how these folk have got a festival called Manipulate, and I agree it's quite an interesting, quite a loaded word. Say to a wider audience, I'm all about manipulation. Be my friends. Maybe I'll just kind of think about that. But and I'm not a graphic designer, so how much does the idea of manipulation come into graphic practice? Because I could imagine that when you meet any client, and I know Melanie a wee bit, and you all had a chance to meet her and see some of the material. I can imagine if I were a designer, I would be thinking about manipulation when I meet a client, in the sense of, well, two questions are the way I've phrased them in my head as I'm listening to you. How clearly do I think this client knows what they want? So there's that sense of how tight and explicit are the parameters?
Mm-hmm.
And then my second question I might be asking myself, if I did what you do, is how deeply do I think this client wants it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, what's the scope I have to take them by the hand and say, actually, no, come over here?
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be that they are very clear about what they want, and they want that very deeply, and so it's ideal. You just know that you're going to be banging your head off a brick wall.
Yeah.
You know, what was your sense from the conversation with Melanie and some of the other stuff that she's provided you with? Do you think there's scope to manipulate these people in the nicest, most creative, mutually beneficial sense?
I think so. She was quite open what she wanted. Like, she wants something new. So I think like that's what she said quite a few times. Like, just like kind of surprise her almost. So I think we could kind of change what she wants a little bit. Because she's not completely set on what she wants. So then maybe it is quite open already. Like, there are the brand guidelines, but I think we could be quite.
And I guess just the fact that she's here, not out at a sort of professional agency and seeing their back catalogue.
Yeah.
You know, she is here, so it suggests that she really is open to those kinds of suggestions.
Yeah.
Did that come across for the group as a whole, or are there some of you who would be more inclined to say, well, yeah, she might have a little bit of flexibility or curiosity, but I get a sense that actually there's some pretty tight parameters here?
I feel like if you can justify why you've done something, it should be open to an idea. Because I know she said she doesn't want changes to the website or to the logo or to the branding, but I guess if you showed her something that works with what they want or something that they think is going to work in the outside world, maybe they'll go with it. Because it's just usability.
I'm surprised they've got brand guidelines, to be honest, of
Yeah,
being
also.
such a small
I
firm.
don't think they do. I think that's
Do you think
why
she's just rushing to do it now?
Yeah.
That's the sort of impression I got as well. Oh,
Actually, I sort of get the vibe that perhaps she has a rather strong idea that she doesn't want us to draw too much tangents from. But I feel like that was more instinctive of what I felt. So I'm personally for my practice in this project, I still aim to open to possibilities. Yeah, but I sort of get that kind of feelings when she was briefing us.
Well, I guess when she's in next, we'll know based on what you, which is always good then for you to have a few different routes forward, so that if you're really off target when she comes in again, because sometimes a client doesn't know what they want until they see something in front of them to know that they don't want that, and then you get a clearer brief. So it's always good to have those other pathways to return to should you need to. You're not starting from scratch, you've already got other ideas.
So I guess, again, keep prefacing it, not as a designer, one thing I would be really interested in at the next meeting, obviously, is to see individual ideas, but also to get a sense, and all of you, I imagine, will maybe make different decisions in relation to this question, if you think it's even a useful question to ask in the first place. How do you want to manipulate her? So one approach might be to say, that's one possible example Zoe's just given, I just want to get to put our cards on the table. I want them to say, no, not that. But yeah, that's more the kind of thing.
Yeah.
Another approach might be to say, I want to see if I can take her by the hand and lead her out and get her to be a little bit more open or adventurous or experimental. Because one thing that struck me, and I know I wasn't here for the whole thing, but I wondered whether she was a little bit. It was clear that she wanted to be here, but it almost seemed to me as though she wanted to have a cake and eat it. But I want you to be really adventurous, but of course, you must use our images. Do you know what I mean? There's another caveat here.
But you could use illustration.
Yeah. It's like, of course we'll go out for a drink, but I want to be home by 7:30 and I've got a list of things that we can't talk about. Do you know what I mean? But I'm still going to do it. It's like, well, actually, what do you really want
But
to do here?
I feel like she doesn't know, because even when we had questions of like, can we use our own images, and she was like, well, don't really know. Even like if it was abstract, like texture, she said no, we should use something from the images that were
I
provided.
feel like that was on the spot kind of.
Like when she said she
Like,
preferred that we'd use their images, I took that as use our images.
But I think here, I feel like we would need another meeting to be like, to actually set the boundaries of what exactly she wants and where we can step out of the box. And
Well, there is no reason why we can't put an email together and just say, even at this early stage, we've got lots of questions that might benefit from her coming back in.
slightly confused with what we can and can't do.
This is absolutely typical of working with the client. And that's why they come here to you, or when you're out in a different role out there. That's why they pay the money. Because through you, it can help them to figure it out. And sometimes you have an account handler who does that before you even get the brief. And then there's no ambiguity, this is what it is. But with some smaller sort of clients, with smaller agencies working with them in that way, it is a bit of a sort of to and fro process before you can really kick on. And coming up with different kinds of ideas at all ends of the spectrum helps them figure out what it is that they want to do. Have you done the visual positioning exercise? Okay. Marco might have done it with you and called it something else. I'll find out if he has. If not, we'll be doing that.
What's that, Zoe? Just briefly.
It's where you can take a series of words, descriptive words. It might be like typography, colour, environment, music, furniture, animal, and you collect images based on those words where the company sits now.
Okay.
Right. So for an animal with Puppet Animation Scotland, it might be a nice cuddly cat, if there's such thing as a nice cuddly cat. I don't know. Yeah. And then going forward, where do they want to be? Do they want to be a little bit more like a Siamese cat? Or are they a jaguar?
Yeah.
So then you do images based on where you are now and where you want to be. And that might be a few steps forward, or it might be, like I say, the marathon, the jaguar. And just having that visual for the client, saying this is where we think you are now in terms of those images. And this is where you should be. And you show them the new images. Really helps the client understand how they're perceived and how they want to be perceived. And then you negotiate whether those images are too far ahead or just too safe and too close to what you've got.
I don't think Marco has done that.
If you haven't done that,
No.
right, well, watch out next week. Yeah, I'll get that to you and we'll talk about it. Do that next week.
Michael, and to my presentation then.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. I'm aware of time. We're rather...
Yeah, we
Sorry about that.